program and to participate in this most important town hall gathering. I want to welcome all of those that have come here in person, and I want to welcome all of those that are streaming live stream on Facebook, on CBS, and on WJZ. I want to also thank our co-sponsors for this event. We could not have a better co-sponsor than the Maryland Alliance for Public Charter Schools. Please give them a round of applause. We also want to thank WJZ, who jumped to the opportunity to co-sponsor this with us. Give them a round of applause, please. I want to thank my outstanding staff. I get a lot of credit all the time for all of these programs that we do, but truly it is the hard work of my staff, Dr. Ron Howell, Ms. Cynthia Jacobs, Taekwon Rice, Imani Barnes, Pat Hemphill, Sherry Weaver, Melissa Burks, and Denise Robinson. Would you please give them a round of applause? Most important, I want to thank our two board members who jumped to the opportunity to help co-sponsor this event, Ms. Tessa Hill-Ashton and Mr. Kevin Baker. Please give them a round of applause. Last but not least, I want to thank Baltimore City Community College for inviting us on their campus and hosting us this evening. Please give them a round of applause. We designed this particular town hall, and there's been many town halls, there have been many debates, but we've designed this particular town hall around education. I want to quote one of the most prolific leaders we've had in our time on the subject of education, and that leader is El-Hajj Malik Shabazz, better known as Malcolm X. He said, and I quote, "Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today," end of quote. I guess the overall question of this town hall meeting tonight is how can we improve education in the state of Maryland so that all of our young people can be better prepared for the tomorrows to come. Seated in this audience, throughout this audience and throughout the various media outlets are educators from around the state of Maryland, parents, teachers, students from Baltimore City Public School, and many community leaders. They're all paying attention to this town hall because they're interested in how education can be improved in this state. We are not looking for or looking to hear lofty promises from our candidates. More importantly, we're looking to hear how the candidates intend to do the lofty things that they say about education. With that said, I want to invite to the rostrum the leader of Baltimore Teacher Network for over 25 years, the president, Matt Wernsdorfer. Please give him a round of applause.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to try to be brief. Again, my name is Matt Wernsdorfer. I proudly serve as the president of the board of the Baltimore Teacher Network. I am so grateful that you all are here. I want to start by acknowledging board members in the audience. I know we have 3 or 4. If you could just stand to be recognized, please. With Tessa and Anthony and Curtis and Kevin and Ziva. Yeah, thank you. All right, so very quickly, the Baltimore Teacher Network was founded by a set of teachers, as Elijah said, a very long time ago. I was 4 when we founded it. It was about teachers needing to grow and get better at their jobs and not having enough people around to help them do it. And we realized if anybody was going to do it, we were going to do it for ourselves. We knew that we did not have enough spaces to talk about policy. We knew that we did not have enough people talking to us about how to improve schools, and we wanted to create spaces where we could learn. And so we have shifted in form quite a few times. We operate some beautiful charter schools, and we have been supporting teachers for over 2 decades. And hopefully you will experience tonight just another opportunity to learn and focus on teachers in schools. So really grateful that everyone is here tonight. All right, that's my spiel on BTN. So last thing I want to do, we've done a bunch of graduations here. Obviously, they are gracious hosts in letting us be here tonight. I just want to repeat Elijah's appreciation of BCCC and specifically Vice President Michael Thomas. So with no further ado, let me bring Vice President Michael Thomas to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Good evening. Just want to take a minute to let you know we really appreciate and we're honored that you've joined us tonight. We are the Baltimore City Community College, and we serve our community. And so we're here to serve. So we hope this won't be your last visit with us. If we can do anything for you, from associate's degrees to our GED program to our workforce programs, in which we also place our graduates in employment. So we're honored to have you. Thank you so much for joining us, and let's have a wonderful evening as we learn from our candidates. Thank you so much.
Very quickly, before we begin streaming and that we begin introducing the candidates and begin our town hall debate, these are the rules this evening. You already heard about turning your cell phones off. Please silence them now. That's very critical. No recording or flash photography is permitted except for the cameras that are here. No campaign banners, signs, clothing, buttons, literature, handouts, or other campaign paraphernalia allowed in the auditorium. I don't see any. I think we're all in compliance. Literature only allowed on designated tables in the hallway. Once the debate begins, you are allowed to cheer them as they come out. But once the debate begins, no applauding or in other ways demonstrating support or non-support for a candidate, no booing, no cheering. Let's have decorum. Candidates are assigned to seating up here on the stage randomly. It was randomly. They will remain seated during the forum. Bottled water, as you see, they have it. Each candidate's allowed to bring 1 page of notes. We will be alternating direction with each question. So we'll be going this way, then this way, then this way. That's the order in which we will have them speak. In general, candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to each question, with 1 minute rebuttal. If a candidate calls out another candidate by name, that candidate is allowed for 1 minute of rebuttal. And then we will reassume the same order that we were in. The moderator, that would be me, has the responsibility for enforcing time limits. Oh boy. I will also have the authority to interrupt the proceedings, to enforce the ground rules and the format that were agreed upon by all the candidates. They have all agreed. I also may restate the question if it's not clear. The panelists and the moderator, these are the panelists here to my left, may interrupt the candidates if they believe the candidate is straying from the subject at hand and not answering the question. The candidates will not interrupt one another. That's a rule. And there will be 60 seconds allotted to each candidate for an opening statement and 60 seconds for a closing statement. So those are the rules, and we're going to begin momentarily. Sorry, we're waiting for the exact time to start. Two and a half minutes, we'll begin. We have none, should we? Stand by. Welcome, everyone, to the Maryland Gubernatorial Town Hall Debate. We want to thank you for joining us, those of you who are streaming on CBS News Baltimore and WJZ.com. My name is Denise Koch, and we are delighted that you are here with us this evening. Tonight's event is sponsored by the Baltimore Teacher Network and also the Maryland Alliance of Public Charter Schools. The topic tonight, our students, our schools, our future. And indeed, nothing may be more critical to the future of our state than the education of our youngest citizens, our children. I have gone over the rules just moments ago with the audience here gathered at BCC tonight, and the candidates also are familiar with all of the rules. There are some strict time constraints, and it is my job to keep us on time and on topic. Oh boy. The sponsors, the Baltimore Teacher Network and the Maryland Alliance of Public Charter Schools, invited every gubernatorial candidate, regardless of party affiliation, and 10 have accepted our invitation and are here with us tonight. I am joined here on the panel by Reverend Antoine Burton and also by Baltimore City's Teacher of the Year this year, Beryl Dudney. They will also be posing questions to the candidates. So first, let's bring the candidates who have accepted our invitation to the stage. We will begin with Nancy Wallace, who is with the Green Party. Robin Thicker, who is a Republican. Kyle Stefchik, who is unaffiliated. Kelly Schultz, who is a Republican. John King, who is a Democrat. John Barron, who is a Democrat. David Lasher, who is a Libertarian. Jerome Siegel, a Democrat. Doug Gansler, a Democrat. And Ralph Jaffe, a Democrat. So these are our candidates. As I said a moment ago, each candidate has now been given a minute for an opening statement, and will begin in the opposite direction in which I introduced them. And we will begin with Ralph Jaffe, as soon as we get the mic on. For a 1-minute opening statement,
When do I start?
right now.
Can you hear me? First, I want to thank the Teachers Network for letting me come. I'm a little different than my opponents. I respect them all. But Maryland, in my opinion, is one of the most corrupt states in the United States. My candidacy is based on doing something about the corruption. I want to get money out of politics. Too much money is being spent, millions of dollars being spent. And then what happens, with all due respect, you don't get the truth. You get a bunch of gobbledygook. I want to put a stop to that. I don't take campaign contributions because they're bribes. And also, what troubles me is the media is also, unfortunately, very morally bankrupt. They allow these politicians to come on, tell untruths, misinformation, and you are the ones who are serving because you're not getting real information. Check my website, fedupwithcrookedpolitics.com. I hope you'll join the movement to get rid of all the corruption in Maryland politics. Thank you.
All right, from now on, we will stay on topic. The topic this evening, again, is our students, our schools, and our future education. Now, Doug Henson.
Thank you. This election is about crime and criminal justice, including keeping our children safe in our schools. I was a federal prosecutor for 6 years under Eric Holder. I was the state's attorney for 8 years, and I was your attorney general for 8 years. And we need to make sure that our kids are safe when they're at school, that we have school resource officers to keep them safe. So when you send your child to school, you know they'll be safe on the way to school, when they're at school, and on their way home from school. And we need to be able to make sure that we have the blueprint for education passed. And the way to do that is to make sure that, one, we have a Democrat that can get elected in the general election, and two, that we have someone with experience as governor that can understand how the levers of government work to make sure that blueprint and the Kerwin report is implemented for the future of our children. I started a league called Charm City Youth Lacrosse League here in Baltimore City. I am the Baltimore candidate, and I'm excited to be your governor going forward. Thank you.
And Jason Siegel.
Jerome Siegel.
Excuse me, Jerome.
Yeah. So, but I hope this election actually is about education. As you know, we have this thing called the blueprint. It's law. It was concerned with two things. One, what's the mission of the public schools? And second is equity in the pursuit of that, channeling resources towards that. They did a good job on equity. In my judgment, terrible, impoverished job when it comes to the mission of the schools. They're taking Maryland schools in the wrong direction. As governor, I intend to run a statewide conversation with parents about what the missions of the school should be. There's one problem. I have the background to do that. I'm a philosopher. I studied philosophy of education and taught it. I have a lot of government experience, but not as a manager. And how am I going to find the time, basically, to lead that kind of discussion and do the managing? And I thought about government, and I came to a conclusion that just as the president doesn't manage the federal government,
Sorry, sir.
we shouldn't have that here. Just give me one more second. Okay, I just want to make this announcement, and you'll see why. It's very important.
These are opening statements kept to 2 minutes. We'll get to that if it is.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. And now, David Lasher.
Hello, everybody. I am David Lasher, your libertarian option for governor on November 8th of this fall. And I am running for governor because I believe that our American experiment in democracy, our slow but steady progress in liberty, justice, and prosperity for all is in dire jeopardy. And the jeopardy is not for the reasons that the two big parties would have us believe. Jeopardy is coming from the two big parties themselves. They're at holy war with one another. They're no longer representing who we really are. They're not taking us to where we really want to go. So I am standing with my running mate, Christiana, as a principled, accomplished, and civil alternative. I'm an IT executive with experience in federal and state government. I live in Annapolis with my wife and daughter. My wife has spent her career in environmental protection and natural resources. And I'm excited to be talking about education this evening because I believe that the Kerwin report and initiatives have not fulfilled the Kerwin mission.
All right, period. Thank you. All right, John Barron, please.
I'm John Barron. I'm a former nonprofit executive and Clinton administration official. I'm running for governor of Maryland because our state is not making progress on major problems that damage millions of lives, and I'm offering a fundamentally different approach. In education, more than a quarter of middle school students in Maryland can't read at a basic level. Those numbers are no different than they were 20 years ago. Moderate income Marylanders have seen stagnant wages since the 1980s, while income inequality has soared. And our state has made zero progress reducing our poverty rate in more than 30 years. Fellow Marylanders, we can't just keep doing the same thing we've been doing for decades, rolling out one unproven government program after another and expect a different result, because unfortunately many programs, no matter how well-meaning, just don't work. Instead, to make progress, we need to expand solutions that don't just sound like good ideas, but have actually been tested in the real world and shown to make a big difference in people's lives, and that's what I'll be discussing today.
Okay. John King.
Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here this evening. My name is John King, and I'll be the education governor not just because I was President Obama's Secretary of Education, or just because I'm the only current public school parent on the stage, but because I wouldn't be alive today but for the grace of public education. School was my safe haven when both of my parents passed away, my mom when I was 8, my dad when I was 12. I struggled in high school, like many kids who've experienced trauma, got kicked out of high school, and it was teachers and a school counselor who gave me a second chance and put me on the path to become an educator. We need a teacher as governor because a teacher will fight for world-class schools for all our kids. A teacher will fight for universal affordable childcare. A teacher will fight to make sure we fully fund all of our schools by asking multimillionaires to pay their fair share. A teacher will fight to make sure that we have housing that we can afford, that we have an economy of shared prosperity. Maryland needs a teacher as governor.
Very good, thank you. Kelly Schultz.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kelly Schultz, and I am looking to be your next governor. Listen, I was a product of public schools when I grew up. Both of my boys were products of public schools, and my one-year-old grandson will undoubtedly be a product of public schools as well. And this is what I know. We need to be able to make sure that every public school is working. Regardless of the zip code that our children live in, we need to be able to make sure that it's functioning. That's why several months ago, I introduced the Parental Bill of Rights, to be able to make sure that parents are empowered in their educational options for their children, to be able to make sure that our kids know how to read, write, do math, learn skills like PTEC and anything else that comes their way. But we need to be able to make sure that our kids have the advantages that they need to have, because we are the smartest state in the nation. We have more PhDs in Maryland than any other state per capita, and we need to prove it to those kids that are out there every single day learning from us. And I'm going to be the governor to be able to get that done.
Thank you. Kyle Sepchik.
Yes, guys, my name is Kyle Sepchik. I'm the only unaffiliated candidate. I have 2 boys. They're 5 and 7 years old, so you can imagine where my focus is right now. My brother is a 3rd grade teacher in public schools in Maryland. But I actually just want to take this opportunity, instead of talking about myself right now, is actually just praying. I like to pray over these kind of things. So Lord God, just pray over the candidates here tonight. I pray that, we find, wisdom and respect here tonight as we find true ways to heal Baltimore and the education here. Lord God, we pray over the city. I pray over the parents, the teachers, and the students that truly need answers, Lord God. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
All right, Robin Ficker.
Hello, students at the wonderful Baltimore City Community College. I'm Robin Ficker, running for governor. I like your looks. I like your style. I hope to be your governor in a little while. I'm the only candidate for governor that's going to cut your taxes every day by cutting the state sales tax 2 cents, giving you $780 a year in your pocket more every single year. And that will act as a lure to all the big businesses that are shunning Maryland and should be providing good jobs here. Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Caterpillar, Global Foundries, Google, Intel, Microsoft, Nucor Steel, Samsung, Texas Instruments, Taiwan Semiconductor, Tesla, Toyota, Raytheon have all either made multi-billion-dollar expansions or moved their national headquarters, and I left out Boeing. We should have those jobs here, but the Maryland Department of Commerce has been asleep. I'm not going to be asleep as your governor. I'll be helping you get jobs.
Time is up. Thank you. Nancy Wallace.
Good afternoon. The Green Party of the United States is the only national political party that accepts no money from corporations or PACs. We're here entirely representing the people of the United States, the families, the communities, and the students. I personally, and many of us, are motivated by a student, Greta Thunberg of Norway. We feel the biggest threat right now, and one of the reasons that students feel disheartened about their future is climate change. So dealing with the climate change issue led by students, such as the Sunrise Movement and the Extinction Movement, are major factors of our bringing reality to the situation of what's going on in students' lives. They need to know that in 10, 20, 30, and 50 years, they'll have food and water and reliable climate. So my emphasis is the future. We oppose police in schools, and I think the Kirwan Commission was a good step, and I also think that we need to reorient the state budget so that education and climate are our priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we're moving to the question portion of the evening, and as I said, we went this way, now we're coming this way. So we are going to begin with you, Nancy Wallace. I will throw out the first question here. What do you see as the #1 challenge facing Maryland schools? What would be your first priority regarding education in our state if you are elected governor?
I would provide full funding for Kirwan Commission, and I would develop a program in the schools where the students can focus on what they would like to learn in terms of changing their future. I think we need to develop student leaders in terms of social policies, in terms of climate. We have student leaders across the US and across the world on climate. We also have a huge threat that's generally not connected directly with education, which is students' health, child's health. Why is it that the Democratic Party allowed arsenic to be put in the food of chicken farms in Maryland, which went right to our food, our dinners, and our stores? Why did they allow that for 30 years, knowing that arsenic would accumulate in the meat of the chicken and our tissues? Just recently, a few years ago, did they stop that? Why do we allow PFAS, perfluorinated hydrocarbons, allowed coming off all of our military installations in Maryland and our fire stations? It's been stopped now, but we still have a residue. Why do we allow these toxic chemicals, pure poisons? Why are they not stopped? Green Party doesn't take any money from any of the industries that are regulated. If we don't allow judges to take money from people coming before them with cases, if we don't allow the executive branch to take money from people coming before commissions, why do we allow the legislatures? We need to not just get money out of politics, we need to make sure that people who are taking and participating in this system, which unfortunately has driven us in the corporate direction so far that we've just lost sight of what really our communities are and our values. And we need to orient our education. For instance, I would like to start a program of academies in our high schools where students who go through any technical or service, social service, political training academies have free college and stipends.
Time's up. Thank you. Robin Ficker.
Okay, I'm Robin Ficker. And I've met many of you students down on the boardwalk in Ocean City the last 3 summers, because I'm there every weekend. And I talk to you and I remind you to do your summer reading. My father was a Rhodes Scholar. He worked in the Library of Congress for 40 years. And he used to bring me home 6 books every week to read in addition to my schoolwork. By the time I graduated from elementary school, I had visited every country in the world, all without leaving my house. Baltimore has to be the city that reads once again. And as governor, I'm going to have a little reading contest. Every class in every school we're going to find that student that reads the most books in the year. Every class, every school. And then I am going to have the winners come on down to the State House. We're going to give you a governor's award. We may even have a few scholarships. Because if you read, you're on the way up. You're a rising star. And I want Baltimore to be the city that reads. I also want Baltimore to be the sports town USA. And I want to bring in the Baltimore Bombers, a new NBA team here in Baltimore. I believe in sports. My family, we built a track in our backyard, and my daughter was a professional triathlete for 16 years, and both my sons wrestle in school and even in the octagon. If you're participating in sports, you're in shape. You learn teamwork. You learn how to get along with other people. You learn how to compromise. You learn how to excel. And we're going to make Baltimore a sports town and a reading town. We're going to emphasize the positive. I am not going to be criticizing
Thank you,
Baltimore
sir.
at all.
Time's up. Thank you. Time's up. Try and maintain decorum. We talked about decorum. All right, Kyle Selchik.
Yeah, guys, the number one problem I'm seeing is just overall health of these kids, mentality-wise and physical. One of the things that I did in Montgomery Village, which is in Montgomery County, worst part of Montgomery County, I believe, especially when it comes to school systems, is I co-founded an event called Rock the Block. And what we needed to do is we stopped using the same old forms, same old things that programs that these other people were doing. What we did is we brought the community together. And what we did at Watkins Mills, we brought all the feeder schools. All the elementary and the middle schools, and we started this in 2016, and by 2017, 2018, all the grades were going up. There wasn't as much fights and bullying. People were coming together more as a community. There's more trust and other things outside of the school systems as well, and more respect for the teachers and administration. And until COVID, it was thriving, and then Rock the Block was the thing. If you guys look it up. So things like that, bringing health and mental, just better camaraderie and better just things to these kids. And I'm sure there's more answers coming up. I'll be able to explain a little bit more what I'm talking about. But if you guys look at these kids, they're messed up. You know what I'm saying? It's the mentality and their health. What they're eating, what they're drinking, that's a whole other thing I'm sure we're going to get to in other questions. But my heart is truly in the community. That's all I've been. I've never been in politics, you guys. I've always served in the community through my nonprofit in these events, and we're trying to use my skills to really bring people together. And that's what I'm going to do for these kids, for the staff. I want to make these kids not only just look healthier, but feel healthier. When we see that, these kids are just going to get along better, feel better about their lives. And like I said, have more respect for the people that are trying to teach them and help them grow. So that's the number one issue I would say. Thanks.
Thank you. Kelly Schultz.
Hi, thank you for the question. I think it's very important. As a matter of fact, it's one of the most important questions that each of us have to deal with when we're running for governor. And that's why several months ago, I put out my Parental Bill of Rights. And unfortunately, there's not one thing, there's not one easy answer. That's unfortunate, but it's true. We have to be able to make sure that parents are empowered. We have to be able to make sure that they have the empowerment to make sure that our kids are learning in schools. They're learning how to read, write, do math, learn skills, and just be decent human beings. That's what they can be in these schools. That's what we have to be able to make sure that they have the opportunity to do. And if those schools are not doing that, then the parents should have a choice. Quite frankly, the parents should have a choice. And public charter schools is something that has been able to be done very well in Washington, D.C. and New York City. And it has been done well in those two cities. There is no reason why Maryland cannot do that either. Because regardless of the zip code in the schools that our kids go to, they should have an opportunity for a quality education, a world-class education that we should be able to provide for them. And then the other part of my Parental Bill of Rights is transparency, to be able to make sure that those schools are reporting back to us on what our kids are actually learning and how they're learning, and to be able to make sure that we can hold them accountable. And if we're holding them accountable, then we have to put their feet to the fire, and we have to make sure that we put our kids first, because that's why we are all here today. It's about the choice. It's about the safety, putting SROs, making sure that they're in all of our schools, and making sure that parents have a choice for public charter schools if and when that needs to happen.
Thank you. John King.
The biggest challenge we face is equity. Think about what we saw in Baltimore in June, schools having to close because there's no air conditioning. That would never happen in Potomac. That's an equity issue. Too often, our low-income students, our students of color, our English learners, our students with disabilities, students in rural communities are getting less access to science and social studies, less access to art and music, less access to advanced placement courses, less access to quality career and technical education. The blueprint for Maryland's future, which the General Assembly passed over the governor's veto, gives us the opportunity to direct resources to close those opportunity gaps. I was proud to be a part of a coalition of civil rights groups and educators who worked to shape the blueprint. The challenge we have is we need a governor who will actually follow through on the blueprint. Unfortunately, Kelly Schultz opposed the blueprint. Unfortunately, Peter Franchot opposed the blueprint. There are other candidates like Wes Moore who say they're for it, but then won't say how they'll pay for it. We've been clear that in the out years, we are going to need additional revenue. We'll have to ask large corporations and multimillionaires to pay their fair share so that we invest in our kids. Ultimately, the investment in our kids is the key to the success not only of our economy, but our democracy. And that means all of our kids need educational excellence. Our students of color, our English learners, our students with disabilities, our rural students, all of them. And that's where I'll lead us as governor.
Kelly Schultz, you have 1 minute to rebut.
Well, yeah, I think that there was a comment there that I have spoken against the blueprint. What I speak against is a very one-size-fits-all prescriptive plan for students across the state. We need to be able to make sure when we talk about equity that those kids that live in those zip codes that right now are forced to be in those zip codes because there's no other options for those zip codes, that we give them an option. Because there's no parent. I was a 19-year-old mom. I dropped out of college. I got pregnant. I got married. I raised my 2 kids. And I spent the next 15 years of my life fighting for my kids' education. And I will say, if I was in a zip code where I had no choice but to put my child in a failing school, I wouldn't have been able to be here with the opportunities that I have and my family has today. And we will fight for those kids in those districts, and we will make sure that everybody across the state has an opportunity to succeed, just like I did, and my kids did, and my grandson will as well.
Okay, let's move on. John Barron.
Thank you. So the biggest challenge Maryland faces in education is that we are stuck. I mentioned more than a quarter of middle school students, 8th graders in our state can't read at a basic level. It's also true that more than a third can't do basic math. It is also true that those numbers are no different than they were 20 years ago. Even though Maryland saw a major rise in education spending during the 2000s, about a 40% increase in education spending per pupil adjusted for inflation. Yet that increase, as the Kerwin Commission found, did not translate into improved student outcomes. And the reason is pretty straightforward. Many well-meaning programs in education don't work. They don't improve student achievement. An example, we spend $50 million a year on teacher training programs across the state. The vast majority of those have no effect in improving reading or math or other scores. I support increased spending on education. I support the blueprint, but I would implement it very differently than other candidates. With the new resources, we would focus them on expanding solutions that don't just sound like good ideas, but have actually been tested in the real world and shown to make a big difference in student outcomes. I'll give you 2 examples. Number 1, we will expand high-quality tutoring to every struggling 1st and 2nd grader in the entire state of Maryland, because that has been shown to move them up toward grade level early, before their problems get serious in later grades. We're going to do this by recruiting an army of people from the community, including retirees and recent college graduates, to become tutors for a modest stipend as a public service. We will also expand effective charter schools, public charter schools like KIPP charter schools, which have been shown, these are no excuses charter schools, they've been shown to increase school-wide reading and math achievement by about as much as 10 percentile points. I worked with the Obama administration to expand them nationally. We should expand them here in Maryland. I have other examples as well.
All right, thank you. David Lasher.
Thank you. The number one challenge is that we need to start bringing a healthy skepticism to the Kerwin blueprint. Which blueprint is simply going to pour vastly more money into the system that has already failed Maryland and Baltimore so comprehensively, as John was just sharing some statistics. The Kerwin Commission was supposed to bring about innovation and accountability. And I submit that's what we need. And how do we bring about what is the innovation and how do we bring about accountability? The innovation is that we need to inject more choice into the education system, not just for students that everybody talks about, but also for teachers themselves. My question to this audience and to fellow Marylanders is, why don't we want to give poor kids the same privilege that rich kids have of choosing the schools that they go to? My question to the same audience is in regard to teachers. Why don't we want to give teachers the same kind of career opportunities that we see in higher education, for example, that we see in other professions? This is the direction that I want to see Kerwin move in. Choice for students and their parents and guardians, choice for teachers, just as has worked so well in higher education. Let's bring choice that has worked well there into K and 12, K through 12. Thank you.
Jerome Siegel.
The single biggest priority is a lack of our understanding of our own history. We don't know who we are. Ron DeSantis is focused on something he makes fun of, called wokeism. And he's rallying the right and waging the cultural war against people in the North who are concerned with being woke. Well, being woke is in fact what school is about. It's what education is about. It's about learning who you are and who you've been. And this country, as a matter of fact, not black children. Black children actually know more about who we are and the history of this country than white middle-class people do, because they live it. What we don't know in this country is our history. We don't know the 1619 Project. We don't know about slavery. We don't know about lynchings in the North. We don't know about race riots in the North. We don't know about pogroms. We don't know about medical experiments, right, that deliberately sacrifice generations of black men testing out cures for syphilis. We don't understand what's happening in our society, any of us, and there's a war coming. You think it's crazy. Trump was an accident. He was an aberration. He had no ideology, just a narcissistic creature. But behind him, there are people like Cruz and DeSantis, people who've clerked for the Supreme Court.
Focused on Maryland education, sir. Maryland education.
Oh, pay attention. You'll get it. You will get it, okay? What I'm saying is that the single biggest thing that we've got to do in education is shift away from the blueprint focus on X, Y, and Z, and instead focus on history. Because you can't do one thing without giving up another. When you start talking about giving up, it's a big question. Are you going to give up math? I would say, now, my view on it isn't what's important. What's important is the dialogue with Maryland's parents. And that's what I'm interested in as governor.
I'm listening.
How do we have that dialogue?
Thank you. Doug Gansler.
Did you get it? Did you get my point?
So are you finished?
I don't usually get the moderator criticizing me. I just want to make sure that I made clear that I was really about education.
That's all, just trying to keep you on point.
I was on point.
I must say, when I walked on the stage, even given the cast of candidates here, I did not think I was going to get to talk about arsenic and chicken poop. But Nancy, thank you so much, because experience does matter. And so when I learned that arsenic was in chicken feed, and therefore being pooped, and then part of the 2 billion pounds of chicken manure that goes to the Chesapeake Bay, I actually understood how the levers of government worked and had that law changed. So that was my bill. I was responsible for that. And I think experience really does matter. I have more experience in Maryland government than everybody on the stage combined. And in the Democratic field, other than the 75-year-old tax collector, I have more experience than the rest of the field combined as well. And that's important, again, because of education and because of getting the levers of government to work for people. The number one priority of government, in my view, is keeping people safe, and in particular, keeping our children safe. So we need to make sure that we have someone that understands that crime disproportionately affects communities of color and underserved communities. Nobody's getting murdered in Caves Valley this evening. And so we need to make sure we have more police officers that are well-trained for de-escalation. We need to make sure that we have SROs in the schools to keep our children safe. We need to make sure that we're taking guns and getting them out of schools and off of the streets. And when convicted felons have guns and are committing crimes, they need to be in the federal system so they're put in jail. At the same time, we should have drug courts. I started the first drug courts in Maryland's history. And we put too many people in jail, and we need to keep people out of jail in a way from committing those, from being put in jail for having a drug problem. Electability is the most important thing right now, I think, in Democrats' minds. With the Supreme Court that just overturned Roe v. Wade, that just put more guns on the street, and as we've been talking about tonight, the blueprint. Let me be as clear as I can. If we don't win the primary, Candace Hollingsworth and myself, we will have a Republican governor. And that will be terrible for education and the blueprint going forward.
All right, time's up. Thank you, sir. Mr. Jaffe.
Ethics is more important than experience. And by the way, I am a teacher, not a politician. I went to the mayor and gave him a tutor-mentor team approach to keeping kids in school instead of dropping out like flies. And I talked to his chief of staff on 3 occasions and made all kinds of promises to me. This tutor-mentor team program, which you can check on my Facebook, just hit Ralph Jaffe, tutor-mentor team, you'll see how this program works. It wouldn't cost the taxpayers 1 penny. And the mayor and his chief of staff fumbled the ball. Guess what? Prince George's County took the program instead. This is another typical example of the moral bankruptcy of the politicians in this city. 3 city councilmen were also made aware of this. They did nothing. This is what's wrong with our state. We have politicians who only care about money, power, and fame. And that's why we're so messed up.
Okay. Now, the next question, again, we reverse direction, and this time the question will be posed by Pastor Antoine Burton. Pastor.
Good evening. According to Maryland Center for School Safety, there were a total of 68 threats made to a school or a school system facility and 75 reported arrests made within a public school in the state of Maryland during the 2020-2021 school year. In Baltimore City alone, there were 10 handguns confiscated from Baltimore City public school students this school year. Given the significance of Baltimore City to the state of Maryland, along with its current public safety challenges and the failures of the historic zero tolerance policies, what is your commitment to Baltimore City in providing a more comprehensive remedy to the current safety crisis?
Begin with you, Mr. Jaffe.
I repeat, I offer this program to the city free of charge. Wouldn't cost the taxpayers 1 penny. And this is how I got treated. Well, you should know we have over 40 tutor mentors ready to go. The way this program works, it's designed to keep kids in school instead of dropping out like flies. The key to teaching students in Baltimore City and any urban cities like this, you have to take a kid who's rebellious and has given up and is lost, make him feel like he is a somebody instead of a nobody. And this is what my program is designed to do. Again, it wouldn't cost the taxpayers 1 penny. So what you will see is you will see the biggest reduction in crime if we can get this tutor program started so we can get these kids on the right track. This is what the tutor team mentor program is all about.
Mr. Gansel.
I was a prosecutor for 22 years, keeping crime down and lifting justice up, beginning when I was the head of the NAACP Criminal Justice Committee in Montgomery County in 1989, working on criminal justice issues. I was the chief law enforcement officer in Montgomery County, 1.1 million people, most diverse county in the state. We had 13 murders a year. As I mentioned, I'm the Baltimore candidate. I'm not only wearing my Birds tie tonight because of that, but because of finally winning, and it's been taking a couple decades to get there. But we need to keep people safe here in Baltimore. Almost 400 people are dying a year, depending on how you count murders. But it's almost 400 people, and every other crime is occurring as well. And people are moving out of the city. Businesses are moving out of the city. It is dragging our city from going forward. And we need to have somebody that has experience fighting crime. There is nobody else on this stage or in the Democratic field or in the Republican field that has 1 ounce, 1 bit of experience in criminal justice. So we're going to make Baltimore safe. That is going to be our #1 priority. I love this city. I started, as I mentioned, Charm City Lacrosse 12, 13 years ago. We have 500 or 600 kids in it, making sure we educate them in sports, but also off the field. I first came to this campus, BCCC, when I started Year Up here in Baltimore. I worked first, developed, we partnered with BCCC to make sure that people could get jobs and away from crime. I'm part of College Track, which is helping kids get out of schools and go to college. And I think it's really important to recognize, again, Governor Hogan has done some really good things as governor. People really like him. Baltimore is not one of them. He's neglected Baltimore, and the crime situation has gotten out of control. Only recently did he finally put some money toward the issue. We need to provide resources for this city, and we need to make sure our schools are safe so that when you send your child to school, you will know that child will come home at the end of the day.
Jerome Siegel?
Yeah, I'm going to give a short answer to your question and then go back to what I wasn't able to finish before. The short answer with respect to schools and violence is that the schools are the place in which we have to go deep from the very earliest ages in terms of how do people resolve disagreement? How do they resolve argument and fights? Do they go to ultimately to violence? And we're talking about a culture. It starts at the very earliest ages. It actually starts before kids even get to school. But what the schools can do and should do, basically, is to teach the resolution of dispute through reason. So at the earliest grades, children should be brought into debate and discourse and challenging and argumentation and back and forth, and internalize the idea that the way in which you resolve things is by deliberation and discussion and judgment, and develop a culture of reason. Now, what I was saying before, it goes to the blueprint and it goes to what I would do as governor, okay? I was saying that I think actually the single biggest deficit education-wise in this society is our lack of understanding of who we are. And I was calling that history, 1619, or wokeism. And I think this country is going into a war over this. It's no accident that it's coming from the right wing. And I think the truth of the matter is we've never even fully digested the Civil War. And it's coming back, and it's coming back to Maryland. We may not want it, but DeSantis and his colleagues on the right, they're going to be running for president, and these guys go deeper in their ugliness, deeper than Trump. And they're coming for us. So I think that we have a big issue in Maryland as to what do we teach, okay? And I was talking about trade-offs. And the blueprint is focused on a couple of things, right? Quantitative things that it compared us against Shanghai and Singapore and so on. It was basically math and reading comprehension. The only thing that they can quantify.
Time. Thank you. David Lasher?
Thank you. So for school safety, I think that resource officers in the schools are very important, not the kind of resource officers that I had when I was in high school, but Harvard-trained ones. The community wishes for the resource officers to be armed. That would be their discretion, but resource officers, I think, are part of the equation. I think that, and I'm the libertarian calling for some funding here. This is an important issue, right? And it's important not to be dogmatic. And so funding for school security in two respects, not just partly physical infrastructure, right? But also training and making sure that in the moment of a crisis that everybody, teachers and administrators, especially school students too, though, they know what to do, right? I think that kind of training needs to occur. When I was listening to your question, what I was really thinking about is something that no governor can bring about himself, herself. It would be, we need to adopt tactics to achieve the vision of creating environments that are conducive to learning and teaching within the schools. Environments conducive to learning and teaching. When I talk to teachers, do they want to get paid more? Yes, I mean, everybody wants to get paid more. But when I talk, to teach is to have an internal mission. And what teachers want is for their administrators to stand up for them. Teachers want to be empowered, and that's what we need to do. I'm not saying I know how to do it, but I would say that every policy that would run across a Lasher administration desk would go through that lens. And then finally, one last point on violence. If you really are serious about ending violence and beginning to restore hope, in Baltimore especially, you have to end the war on drugs. That's the radical step that needs to be taken that nobody is talking about.
Thank you, sir. Time is up. For John Barron.
Thank you. So people have a right to feel safe in their homes, in their community, when they send their kids to school. The kids have a right to go to school to learn and not to feel like their lives or their safety is in jeopardy. Baltimore, unfortunately, and other parts of the state, other parts of the country have been moving in the wrong direction. We need a governor who will move beyond the rhetoric of let's get tough on crime, on one hand, the empty rhetoric, and on the other hand, isn't saying we have to wait 10 years to address all the root causes of crime. We need a governor who will act urgently and effectively based on the evidence about what actually works to address crime. Here are two concrete things that I would do as governor. Number one, we have good gun laws in the state of Maryland, but there's an area where we are lacking, where we can do more, and that is in the area of safe gun storage. Most school shootings in the United States over the past 20 years have been carried out by youth who got a hold of their parents' guns or the guns of a relative that were not secured. There are other states, Massachusetts and Oregon, that require gun owners, when they're not actually using the gun, to have that gun stored and locked. We should be doing this in Maryland. There's evidence from a study in Alaska showing that when people are required and offered an opportunity to have safe storage, they actually use it. It results in a much higher rate of safely stored guns. What would that do? It would prevent many school shootings, not all, but many, of youth who get hold of their parents' guns. Also, youth suicides. We've had an epidemic of suicides. They're up about 25% over the past 15 years in Maryland. Most are carried out with firearms. Many of those could be prevented with safe gun storage laws. One other major step I would take to improve safety, public safety in Maryland, is to partner with Baltimore officials on a crime prevention strategy that I'll discuss later, called Focused Deterrence, which focuses on multiple people who have multiple violent offenses.
Thank you, sir. John King.
You know, as a teacher and principal, I lost students to gun violence, sat in the living room of moms mourning the loss of a child. So I know firsthand the stakes of this conversation. But we're fooling ourselves as we think the solution is just policing alone. We need a strategy that's broader than that. We need a strategy that is policing plus mental health services, policing plus addiction treatment, policing plus jobs programs for teens in the summer and apprenticeship programs for young people who are disconnected from school, policing plus reentry programs for folks who are returning home from incarceration, policing plus violence interruption programs like Safe Streets. When it comes to schools, people are misrepresenting the facts if they say that armed police officers within school buildings would be better. The fact of the matter is the evidence is clear that armed police officers in schools feed the school to prison pipeline, increase the likelihood that particularly students of color will be arrested, will end up in prison. They increase the likelihood that students will be expelled or suspended from school. Now, what we need is a comprehensive approach within schools. There can be school security staff that work for the school district who see themselves as part of the educational process, but then we also need school counselors and mental health services for kids and families. We need programs after school and in the summer to keep kids positively engaged. We need programs in the community like rec centers that help kids find positive outlets. If we only pursue a strategy of SROs, we will exacerbate the school to prison pipeline. And unfortunately, that's what other candidates in this race on both the Democratic and Republican side are calling for. It's the wrong direction.
Kelly Schultz?
Thank you so much. And sir, I very much appreciate your question because it's a really valid question. And I think it goes to the heart of why we're all here, all of us on the stage and everybody here in the room. Listen, the safety of our children is the number one priority. I reject the fact that somebody can say that it's rhetoric. This is not rhetoric. This is life and death. These are our kids and our grandchildren that we're sending to schools right now that are in a struggle. And it's up to all of us to be able to find solid solutions to what those struggles are. And there's not going to be one simple answer, but I can tell you that if you have safety, security measures at a school where there's going to be a potential problem, you are part of the solution. And we're going to be able to make sure that those schools are a part of the solution, that they have SROs in there to be a part of the community. Because what I know, when I talk to kids and when I'm at these schools and I'm talking to those law enforcement officers, they're sitting down and having lunch with our kids. They're learning about what they're doing after school, and they're understanding what happens every single day in their lives, and they become a part of their community. That's what we're going to do. And when I talk about my three main priorities in this campaign, it's very simple. It's safety, it's steady education, and it's prosperity. But you cannot have one without the other. You cannot have a great education system if you don't have great safety in order for those that are going to the school in order to be able to benefit from that. And you cannot have prosperity if you don't have parents that can walk down the street with their kids to go to the park without getting hit by a stray bullet. So our safety and our security type of platform is very simple. We are going to treat the criminals like criminals and the police officers like heroes, because that's who we need to be able to focus on, and that's the type of society we need to be able to raise our children in. And we need to be able to continue to move forward. Yes, we need to have stricter gun laws and make sure that criminals are in jail, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But thank you, sir, very much for your question.
Kyle Selchuk.
Hey guys, you guys see it. I see it as well. I run summer camps, basketball camps. I own 2 gyms. I'm with kids programs all the time. I actually have kids programs in public schools. If we don't do something very serious to make these kids safer, things will get worse. You see it. You see it. What these kids are watching and listening to and where their heads are at. There will be worse if we don't do something about it very seriously. I own a company called Black Rock Tactical. What I've been doing for the last 6 years is traveling across the country, preparing teachers and staff for school shootings. I've been taking this serious. You can look it up. Look up Black Rock Tactical, Kyle Sepchik. This is what I do. I go to schools and hospitals, and we prepare people for these situations that unfortunately right now are inevitable. I also have a private detective license. I have my badge on me right now. I own 2 gyms, like I said. I fight professionally in MMA and teach self-defense all over the state, not just my gyms. You can imagine my mindset when it comes to safety and security, especially for the 2 most important things to me in my life, my children. You see it. We have to do something, and it has to happen. And it's not just with making security measures better at schools, which blows my mind how easy it is for people to go into schools and get things into schools when you're protecting all these other people. And to me, I'm like, aren't the kids the most important thing? You got all these other government facilities going all crazy with everything possible, but when it comes to schools, you can just walk right in.
Robin Ficker?
Oh, I think it's attitudinal. It starts with the governor. You've got to have a governor that has the right attitude. I don't believe there's a bad kid. I think we all should transfer hope to our youngsters. I believe every day is another chance to excel. Maryland is not a namby-pamby state. We're not a wallflower state. Let's talk about Arizona for a minute. Do you know that the governor there, Doug Ducey, who's a friend of mine, just brought in the largest private investment in Arizona history, a $20 billion semiconductor plant in Arizona. And Intel just put a $20 billion semiconductor plant, the largest private investment in Ohio. Why didn't they build that $20 billion plant in Maryland to take the place of Bethlehem Steel that was gone a generation ago? Those jobs would pay up to $60 an hour to make semiconductors. Every squeegee kid would be over at Intel trying to get a good job. We need jobs here in Maryland, and the big companies have been shunning our state. And that's not going to happen when Robin is governor. We need violence in our schools. We need football. We need soccer. I was disappointed when the Maryland University lacrosse team only won every game by 5 goals. They should have won by 10. Make our schools a sports state. That's where you have controlled violence. I used to work out with the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali. He was violent, all right, at the right times in the ring, but he wasn't violent in school. We need to control. You've got to set a good example for the kids. I'm going to ask every kid I see as governor,
sir.
what did you do to excel today?
Time. Thank you. Nancy Wallace?
The question was, what are some comprehensive approaches to dealing with violence in schools? And I would say 5. First, we need to solve the community problems which our kids are taking into school. They don't just bring up by themselves. They might occasionally with friction, but fundamentally, we're having people come into schools who are frustrated, who don't see a future for themselves, don't see that future connected with schools, and who don't understand how to peacefully resolve conflicts in a way that maintains their own self-respect and pride. So I think addressing the systemic racism in our society, if you look at the cities across the United States, including all of them in Maryland, the downwind residential areas, the urban areas are the poor and minority areas. The upwind areas are the upper class and the white areas. That systemic racism in housing has continued and is one of the drivers that is the community context for this violence. We also need the kids to have a confidence of their capability to have a real future. So Green Party supports, I absolutely strongly support, the free public college, 4-year college. Countries in Europe are offering this. If they can do it, and we're supposed to be a richer country, why can't we? We can do this. And then we also, number 2, conflict resolution. I agree with the predecessor speaker who said teaching conflict resolution, but what I didn't hear was consensus. There's a lot more to conflict resolution than just not fighting for another day or 2. I do not support police in schools. Again, another candidate's position, because the evidence doesn't support it. It does not reduce violence. I think we need mentoring by adults, and I myself have been a mentor and tutor for 25 years, and we need not to focus on power and dominance, but on caring.
Thank you. Thank you. Time. All right, our next question will be posed by Baltimore City's Teacher of the Year, Beryl Dudney.
Good evening. I'm deeply honored here to elevate the voice of teachers and the power of our students, who are the most powerful people in the world. And as we think about building a world that honors their greatness, teacher retention and quality is a critical component. Maryland has for decades needed to draw teachers in from out of state to fill the gaps in our teacher ranks. As the pandemic exacerbates a long-standing problem of teacher shortages in our state, what are the ways, specific ways, that we might change the ways schools work to attract and retain more teachers?
We'll begin with you, Ms. Wallace, again, attracting and retaining good teachers.
Well, I'm a very strong, unabashed, and vigorous supporter of the teacher unions. Our party is absolutely pro-union, and I personally have said there are 2 professions that are too difficult for me I would never tackle. One was being a waitress and one was being a teacher. I think they are incredibly tough. Teachers are working essentially 12-hour shifts. They're not getting compensated. They're pouring out not just their skills and their training, but their heart every single day. And it's a miracle. Every single teacher is more than a hero. So we need to provide it's just resources, it's funding. And instead of, I would shift the priorities in the governor's budget so that instead of focusing on some of the large-scale building programs, for instance, the state has kicked into a $2 billion metro project or metro line project right around the DC suburbs. It's going to save the commuters 10 minutes. What could $2 billion more do for the teacher assistant resources that we need in our classrooms? So I just think listening to the teachers union as to what is needed. I also am interested in Montessori, which I think produces a different kind of teaching experience and allows the teachers to interact in a wider way, more creative way with the students is something to look into. Thank you.
Robin Ficker.
Well, Alexander the Great had a pretty good teacher, Aristotle. When you have a good teacher, you're a very satisfied student, and it's fun to be in school. I love school. I had perfect attendance for 10 of the 12 years I was in Montgomery County Public Schools. I was early for school and stayed late, and the teacher was always part of that. We need to tell our parents and teach our parents how to get along with the teacher and be a partner with the teacher. Make the teacher part of the family. Teachers have to be paid well, and I think that we're spending too much money on things other than teachers in the schools. That's where the focus needs to be. If we have good teachers, we're going to have a great Baltimore City. Half of life is showing up. You've got to show up for work every day, teachers and students. I want to bring back these perfect attendance awards so that people show up for work and show up to study. I'd like to see the bookmobiles go out again in the neighborhoods so that kids can pick out the extra books that they want to read. Teachers are important. The teacher is the most important person in your life other than your parents. And you've got to get along with your teacher. The kids should know this, the parents should know this, and the teachers will enjoy coming to work every day. Most of the teachers I've met on the boardwalk in Ocean City, they love their little students. They were upset when they couldn't have in-person education. And I was upset when Maryland was the state with the lowest percentage of students in the entire country in actual physical, non-virtual learning. We need to keep our kids in school so that they can interact with their peers.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Al Selchuk.
Hey, can you ask the question one more time, please?
Yeah, of course. Broadly, the question is, how do we address the issue of teacher shortages, and how do we retain high-quality teachers in our state?
Cool. So the best person I know in my life is my brother. We're a year and a half apart. Okay, he's a teacher, a third grade teacher in public schools in Maryland. So I hear a lot from him. Of course, we're connected throughout the community with many other teachers, throughout the state with many other teachers, and knowing how, and even a couple people up here on stage know firsthand how difficult it is more than ever to be a teacher, especially here in Maryland. They feel like they don't have as much say in things. They feel like they don't have community, respect by both the children and the administration, and goes as far as up to the state that's, Board of Education. So to me, it's just overall morale mentality and just how teachers are treated, not just with more pay, which I can definitely agree with, but just, you hear people like, oh, it's teacher day or teacher week, and they get like, it's almost like fake how teachers get their respect or shout out sometime when you see people, but are people really showing that to the teachers here in Maryland? Like, for real. So we need to do something. I'm not going to sit up here and act like I have all the answers to this, but we need to do something to bring together people that are going to make these teachers feel more respected, not just with pay. Make these teachers have more, energy and what they want to do for their school and their community and what they can build, more opportunity. So that's what I would say. Thank you.
Kelly Schultz?
Thank you so much, and congratulations on being Teacher of the Year.
Belongs to students.
Good answer. You should be up here. Listen, I just want to say that in terms of the state of Maryland, teachers in general have a pretty good place in the state of Maryland. We have given record funding year over year to the educational system. Teachers in Maryland are in the top 10 states as far as pay is concerned. But I served as 4 years as the Secretary of the Department of Labor. And I know what it takes to retain and attract and maintain anyone from any industry. And it comes down to a couple of things. It comes down to your pay, it comes down to your value, and it comes down to what your employer is willing to do to make sure you're there. And then there's the enjoyability of your job, right? So teachers, plumbers, electricians, engineers, it doesn't matter. And it all comes down to something simple. It's being able to make sure that people are valued. And we have the same conversation when it comes to law enforcement officers and the shortage that we have for them that want to do their jobs and teachers. We know with my Parental Bill of Rights, one of the big major parts that we talk about is the way that school systems have their transparency and the way that they spend their money. We as parents and grandparents want to be able to make sure that the increased funding and the record funding that we put into the school systems, it's actually going to go down to the classroom. So that teachers don't have to go to the dollar store or to Walmart or to Target to buy their supplies for their students in the classes. The school systems get that money that can transfer into the school systems, and it can help teachers out every single day. It's the little things that are going to show those young people that want to get involved in an industry, which we call education, to be able to want to provide them for a future, because they need to know that they can make a difference in somebody's life. That's what the Parental Bill of Rights is all about, and I look forward to having a further discussion. Thank you.
John King?
As a lifelong educator and as a public school parent, I'm very worried about the teacher shortages and teacher turnover that we're seeing. A number of things we need to do. One, we need to raise teacher pay. The blueprint commits to raising teacher salaries. I propose accelerating that so we get to a starting salary of at least $60,000 across the state starting next year. But pay alone is not enough. We also have to address working conditions issues. I was in Prince George's County not long ago talking to a school counselor who's responsible alone for supporting 700 students and families. That's impossible. That's a working conditions issue. We've got to make sure we have enough school counselors and mental health services in schools. We've got to make sure that we have heat and air conditioning that works. If you're sitting in your classroom in December in hat and gloves, as happens in Baltimore, that's a working conditions issue that's going to cause you to leave the profession. We've got to make sure that schools support the education support professionals, the paraprofessionals who make schools work. Pay raises for them wasn't a part of the blueprint, should have been. I'll make sure that we follow through on that. We also need to have incentives to recruit folks in areas of high need. And I propose a loan forgiveness, loan cancellation program for folks who are willing to teach in hard-to-staff subjects. We need more bilingual educators, more educators in the STEM fields. We need educator diversity. We have to invest in our HBCUs and our community colleges as pipelines of future educators. But we also have to reject, I think, this trend that we're seeing on the right of pitting families against teachers. And Kelly, I hope you'll commit not to follow the Glenn Youngkin playbook with the Parent Bill of Rights, not to attack teachers for teaching the truth about our history, issues like slavery and segregation. That you'll commit not to attack teachers for teaching Toni Morrison in the classroom the way Glenn Youngkin did in Virginia. That's a dangerous message, and that is driving educators out of the field.
You have 1 minute to rebut.
Thank you very much. This is what I commit to our teachers. I commit to our teachers that we want them to teach our children what they want to teach our children. And every teacher in the state has come to me and said that they want to be able to make sure that our children are proficient in math, in science, in reading, in literature, in skills, so that when they graduate, those teachers can take it as a reward to them that they got their children into a career pathway so that they can be successful and they can be prosperous. That's the commitment that I give to my teachers so that they have a path to be able to move forward so that they can do the job that they got into the profession to do, which is to get the kids a good, healthy start on their rest of their adult life.
But will you have a tip line like Virginia does, where people can call and report the teacher
Sir, we're
for
moving
teaching
on.
about our history?
We're moving on to Mr. John Barrett.
Thank you, and congratulations to your students, I guess, on your being Teacher of the Year. Both of my parents were educators. My mother taught special education to kids with reading disabilities in middle school, and she worked so hard. I mean, from 5:30 in the morning, and she'd stop working, she was always thinking about her students. 20 years later, she would be met in the parking lot by her students, thanking her for what she did. We need people like her and many other good people teaching and staying in the schools. Here are some concrete things that I would do. Number one, as I mentioned before, I proposed a statewide tutoring corps for every struggling first and second grader in the entire state of Maryland, to pair them with a tutor from the community, from a recent college graduate or a retiree, to help move them up toward grade level. We should do that not only in early school, but first and second grade, but there's some very effective programs later as well. For those tutors who are exceptional, who are really good with the students, moving them up in terms of achievement, have a good rapport with them, there should be a path for them to become regular public school teachers, a tutor to teacher pipeline. That's one concrete idea. Second, I agree we absolutely need to provide competitive pay, and I would do that. And fully implement the blueprint in that regard. Number three, we need to provide effective support for teachers. Many teacher training programs don't actually work. They don't result in improved student outcomes, but some do. One example of a very promising program are teacher induction programs, where you pair an experienced teacher with a less experienced teacher who provides coaching, in the classroom assistance. That's the kind of support, professional support, that teachers need to succeed. Those are my concrete proposals.
Thank you. David Lasher.
My sister is a teacher in Baltimore County, evidently not as good a teacher as some here in the room. I'll be a good brother and let her know that. But my running mate, Christiana, her son just finished his first year of teaching in a tough school down in Virginia Beach. And so the question about what do we do about the teacher shortage? Yes, bring teachers in, but we have to look at the other side. We have to ask the question, how do we keep teachers in, right? We don't want churn. Teacher burnout is a very serious problem. And the conversations that I've had indicate what I spoke to earlier, which is that yes, extra pay will help, but what teachers really want to do is teach, and what they really want is to be supported by their administrations, and they really want to be in an environment that is conducive to learning and teaching. I think that will make teaching better day to day and keep more people in the profession. I think it's important to think about that word profession. I think teaching needs to become a profession like other professions, more like other professions, more like my own profession, IT, which is where if you are a professional, you get recruited. Other firms, so other schools in this case, are looking for the good teachers. You've got schools competing for you. And this happens in higher education as well, right? So that you have career options. So I think the career options for K through 12 teachers is something that we really need to bolster. The last thing that I would add is that for young teachers especially, again, a profession like other professions, we need to make it so that young teachers are not subject to seniority ladders and can become teaching entrepreneurs themselves.
Thank
and
you.
with the bell, finish.
Thank you. Jerome Siegel.
Yeah. So I taught for many years at Michigan, at Penn, at the University of Minnesota, Maryland. a little bit at Maryland. I also taught children. Teaching can be the greatest job, but it's the greatest job when there's something really important to you and you see a young person get it. And teachers need the autonomy. And this is where I agree with David, as I often do, about profession and having trust in the values of someone committed to that profession. Well, the blueprint goes in the other direction. The blueprint is basically closing the gap in math between us and kids in Singapore. That's teaching to the test. That's going to drive people further out of the system. So I was saying before, for instance, on history, right? The blueprint deprioritizes history. I think history is much more important than being able to do the square root of the cube root of 17. But my views on this of governor aren't the essential thing. What Maryland needs is a real conversation about the mission of public schools between the governor and the parents. And that is the conversation that I want to lead. And it raises this question, though, of what is it to be governor? And there's a dichotomy in this race between people who think about being governor as being a manager and people who think in terms of what I would call leadership. Like Obama is he didn't manage the federal government, he led it, but he had people who were managers. Peter Franchot, who wants to fix the potholes and make sure the phones are answered on time, may be a great manager. And we certainly had one, like Rushern Baker, top quality manager in Prince George's. So I think about what am I going to do, and how you can't do both. You can't do both full time. I need to change the concept of being governor, and I need to have a state manager just like we have city managers. And I've spoken to one, and I've got someone who said yes today on the telephone, and it's Rushern Baker. And that's my announcement, that Rushern has told me that if I win, he will serve as the state manager, which will be a new role that we will have to create for Maryland, basically to run a great deal of the state so that the governor is freed up to have the value issues that are leadership.
Thank you. Time's up.
Thank you for your emphasis on your students and our children. My two sons are my heroes, and I watch them and watch them sort of navigate this climate that we're in and the landscape that we're in, and it's very difficult. And so one of the reasons why it's difficult for so many children is because we don't pay our teachers enough. One of the candidates who couldn't bother to be here tonight, there's three Democratic candidates, Wes Moore, Tom Perez, and Peter Franchot are busy getting more money to put on your television screens and didn't want to have this conversation about Baltimore education. But one of those three made more than $1 million a year running a nonprofit. Yet we pay our teachers this paltry sum to work with our children. And our children need good teachers, and they need to have teachers that want to be here, are paid well, and that are supported in terms of resources. One of the things I've committed to is universal child care. It's 47% of women, not all just women, but most women had to leave their jobs during COVID because they didn't have child care. I was first candidate in the race to commit to universal pre-K because we can't have that divide between the kids of underserved communities and others when they show up in kindergarten, which they'll never recover from. We need to make sure our teachers are safe. They're scared. I haven't met a teacher, maybe there are some, that would prefer not to have a police officer in their school to make sure that school does not get shot up and to make sure the kids don't have guns in that school to make sure that they're safe. And we need to make sure we attract and retain minority teachers. When I was the attorney general for 8 years, when I was state's attorney for 8 years, diversity was my top priority, not because I'm a Democrat, not because it's the right thing to do, those are important, but because they're more effective. And you're more effective in your leadership to have your government reflect the community that we have. We're going to make sure we have a mental health professional for every 250 students to also keep teachers safe.
Thank you. Time. Mr. Jaffe.
Well, first of all, any person who survives the classroom teaching experience today deserves the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's number one. Number two, I would do this. I would make teachers the real soul of the system, and the best way is to increase their salaries. I would take administrators and let them pay less, let them receive less money, let classroom teachers be motivated to stay in the classroom, give them the pay increases, and let the administrators stay where they are. And finally, with the two-amendment program I'm talking about, the tutoring team would stay with that student until the student either graduates from high school with a job that the tutoring team helped him or her acquire, or if the student wants to go to college, the tutoring team will stay with that student until the student graduates from college. That's what this tutoring program is all. And again, it's free, doesn't cost any money. And finally, I just have to say that the best way that some of my opponents can do to help the situation, take some of their campaign contributions and give it to the teachers who are increasing salary.
All right, thank you. All right, moving forward, we're going to limit the answers to 1 minute. Moving forward, I have a question from someone in the audience. Do you have plans to audit the Baltimore City school system to track where state and federal funds have gone? We will begin with Mr. Jaffe.
It's a good idea. I think I would definitely support that.
Yeah, look, Baltimore, we're the richest state in the country. We're the smartest state in the country. If you're lucky enough to live long enough to graduate from the Baltimore City school system, you still are more likely to not be able to read at an 8th grade level than you are to be able to read. So obviously we need to do something. And we need to make sure that we have vocational training available. We need to make sure we have the mental health licensed professionals I talked about. But do we need to audit the system? Yes, in the grand scheme of things, we need to audit the system going forward and hold whoever's accountable for the travesty that's going on right now in Baltimore City, where people don't want to be here because they're afraid. Businesses leave here because people aren't coming here. And we need to keep our schools a place to where people want to come, move into the city where they feel safe and have good schools to send their children to. And so we need to look at it. We need to actually roll up our sleeves. Somebody who's actually been in government, made the levers of government work, and get everyone in a room with the stakeholders and develop an audit in the long term of the Baltimore City schools.
Thank you. Jerome Siegel.
Yeah. Of course, everybody's in favor of an audit. Look, there are a whole series of managerial words: audit, evaluation, accountability. It's all modern management, right? But what it obfuscates is the value question. The question is, the issue isn't that people are running away with bags of money that should be used for something else. It's basically that we spend our money for the wrong things. And then the question is, what are the right things? Well, you don't know what the right things are until you get deeply into value questions. So the audit that we need for our schools has to be based on something, which is, what should our schools be doing? We don't want to waste our money, but we're wasting our money actually if we're devoting our educational resources to things that aren't important and are letting things that are critical slip away. And we as a society haven't really deeply wrestled with really what is important. And one way to get to that in your thinking is to think about what goes on in schools, right? All right, I'll say more about this next time.
Thank you. Mr. Lasher.
So transparency and accountability always, therefore audits, yes. The point that comes to mind for me about audits and education is that we have to be mindful about how we use them. The purpose of the audits is not to have a report so that we can sit in Annapolis and beat up Baltimore. That's not why we do audits. We do audits so that we can collect data and work with Baltimore and other communities as partners to bring about better education. So audits for the right purposes, yes.
Thank you.
So I support audits to check where the money's going, but that is not the big issue. The big issue is that in Baltimore City, the achievement numbers are even worse than the state averages. 50% of 8th graders can't read at a basic level in Baltimore. More than a quarter of kids in Baltimore never graduate high school. What is the future for these kids? We're just perpetuating a cycle of poverty. This is an extremely urgent situation. The main focus should be to focus funding on programs that have been tested and shown to work. Tutoring in the early grades is one example. A major expansion of KIPP, public charter schools, is the second example I mentioned. A third one is career academies, which are small communities, learning communities in high poverty high schools that have a career theme. They've been shown to increase long-term earnings for kids who go on to college and for those who don't by $3,000 per year. We need programs that are funding programs that are actually going to work, aren't just well-meaning.
Thank you, John Barron, and now John King.
We certainly need transparency around how resources are allocated, but we have to grapple with the fact that Baltimore has been underinvested in for decades. The schools have been underinvested in, they've been shortchanged, we don't have the school counselors and mental health services that we need, we have schools that don't have working air conditioning and heat. Those issues have to be addressed, but the community has also been underinvested in. Governor Hogan's decision to cancel the Red Line set the city's economic development back decades. The lack of an effective bus system means that kids are regularly late to school. There was a report from the Fund for Excellent Schools that showed that the year before COVID, 80% of high school students were late as a result of an unreliable bus system. So we have to invest in the city with the knowledge that Baltimore's success is the state's success.
Thank you. Kelly Schultz.
A very loud yes to that question, and we've done that. Right, so Governor Hogan got passed a bill, and we have an IG that came out with this great report, which I think some of my colleagues up here are talking about, the other candidates, and it's about leadership. If you have an independent IG report that comes out that says that your leadership has failed you in your schools, and that you have students that can't graduate and do anything with their lives because they have been falsely graduated through programs that they were not able to achieve, there's something wrong with leadership. So not only do we have to continue to move forward on investigating what's happening, but we have got to be able to come to terms with the fact that in Baltimore City and other areas of this state, there are gross misconducts that are happening in our educational system, and it's happening in zip codes where there is a majority minority student population, and we can't stand for that anymore because we have to be about the equality of the kid.
Thank you. Please. Kyle Selchik.
Hey guys, I'm unaffiliated. I'm the only unaffiliated candidate. I have no political ties. There's nobody in my pockets. I'm in nobody's pockets. These people didn't know me until I started running. I say that because one of the main things I want to do is I want to go in there and truly see, just as a small business owner and father, and someone who isn't trusting of the government, just how I've been treated with my small businesses and how I'm seeing the schools and stuff like that. I'm going to be that person that is transparent. They use these words all the time, right? We use these words all the time. But I'm the one that will truly go in there with no fear of who I might, lose as a friend or a partner on this. I have no other intentions, but to really find out the truth and let you guys know really where the money is going and what's really happening with it, so we can make the right decisions for once. I don't fear for my life. I don't fear losing friends or partnerships. I just want to do what's right.
I thank you, Robin Ficker.
Well, I believe in audits. I believe in making sure that the money is spent the way it's supposed to be spent. I'm going to have an open house every Monday morning at 6 a.m. for Marylanders to come and tell me how we can improve our state, what little audits they have discovered and used to find out how the money is being misspent. You're the boss. Every Marylander knows more about at least one subject than I do. And I want to hear what you have to say every Monday morning. We're going to make sure the money is spent right, and I'm going to make sure for you that we spend it right, because butt kicker Ficker is going to be the best governor you've had in a long time.
Please. We've asked no cheering or booing. Please, thank you. Nancy Wallace.
And now for the consensus approach with partnering and getting along with folks. I would support an audit. Obviously, there's a sense in the community here that there's a big problem, but I would put that audit online, everything. And then I would suggest or create a program where each school has a committee, looks at that audit and decides where those funds should go within the school. I would also call for an audit or implement an audit of all of our quasi-governmental commissions. When I found out that the Washington Suburban and Sanitation Commission in the Prince George's Montgomery area, the executive director is making $325,000 a year, which is almost as much as the President of the United States and more than the county executive makes. I think that money could go elsewhere, back into our system, back into our schools, and back into our future. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The next question will be posed by Pastor Antoine Burton.
This next question is on behalf of the faith community, faith leaders, and the We Are Us men's movement that engage our young people every single day. If you are elected as the next governor of Maryland, what supports and changes would you implement to advance public school choice, such as charter schools, traditional schools, magnet programs, contract schools, and CTE schools across the state? If you do not support public school choice, what is your reason?
We'll start with you, Nancy.
I support charter schools as long as they are held accountable to common education standards and as long as they are required to employ the teachers' unions. To use a choice program to escape from the general public school system, to simply opt out, go away, and choose to leave, to me is a great violation of our fundamental commitment to each other, our community, and our caring for our children. Thank you.
Robin Ficker.
Well, I went through the Maryland public schools. My children went through the Maryland public schools. And I believe that the teachers in the public school system can do a good job if only they would. And I'm going to encourage them to do that. I'm going to take a positive approach to our teachers and our school system. I'm going to take a positive approach to Baltimore and urge them to do better every day. I'm not going to assume that, no, they're not doing a good job. I'm not going to say, well, we should get everyone into charter schools without giving our public schools a chance. But I can tell you, as your new governor, I want to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do. You're showing up for work and you're teaching these kids so that our kids can advance, because as a twig is bent, so grows the tree. And I want to see some sequoias coming out of Maryland because you teachers are doing a good job.
Thank you, sir. Kyle.
Yes, sir, will you please repeat the question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
If you are elected as the next governor of Maryland, what support and changes would you implement to advance public school choice options, such as charter schools, traditional schools, magnet programs, contract schools, CTE schools across the state of Maryland? And if you do not support public school choice, what is your reason?
I'll just say this. I believe, parents should be putting their kids where they feel they're going to get the best education. And, as a governor, I would have to make sure that there needs to be programs that make that possible. This is another thing that I'm going to have to look more into, collaborate more with others on both sides of the fence to figure out what that is. But I am for school choice, and I just want these kids in an environment where their best is going to shine. There's so many different types of kids out there, you guys know it. So that's my answer on that. And I have the chance, because I got like 20 seconds. You guys show up. After this, regardless, if I win the race, I still want to connect with you guys, so please find me, because we're still going to be doing stuff in the community. And you guys look around, where is everybody? You guys care, and I really appreciate you guys being here for real, because I've been looking for it around the state for people that truly care. So just thank you for being here. I'm not just saying that to be fake. Please hit me up in the future.
Thank you. Kelly Schultz.
Yeah, I very emphatically believe in parents' choice. I believe that if there is a school that is doing a misdeed to our children, the parents should have the opportunity to take that child out of that school and put their child in a school that is going to be functional for that child. I'm not making any excuses for public charter schools. I'm not putting a disclaimer after it. Public charter schools in the state of Maryland should exist. Washington, D.C. and New York City have been able to figure out, and they have been some of the best charter schools in the nation. There's no excuse why Maryland does not have those charter schools, and we are going to be emphatic in moving forward to be able to make sure that that happens. We're going to be emphatic that things like youth apprenticeship programs, which under my leadership as the Secretary of Labor, we put youth apprenticeship programs in every single school district in the state so that there were choices for students, so that they could be connected to businesses and industry. Those are proof of examples of programs programs that actually work, that make sure that kids have opportunities to do things like career tech and to be able to go out into the business world and be entrepreneurs, and we can make it happen.
Thank you. John King.
My kids have had the benefit in Montgomery County Public Schools of theme schools, magnet schools. I think those are an important part of the public school landscape. So too, President Obama and I believe public charters are an important part of the public school landscape. I think about the Montessori Charter School here in Baltimore, or the College Park Academy School that's a partnership with the University of Maryland, offering important opportunities for kids. I think about the P-TECH schools, which I helped to promote as Secretary of Education, where students graduate with a high school diploma and associate's degree, first in line for a job at an employer partner, which have more high-quality career and technical education opportunities. What we cannot, though, allow is public dollars to go to private schools. I'm opposed to voucher programs. I think we should end the Boost voucher program here in Maryland that directs public dollars into private schools. Unfortunately, Kelly, Peter Francho, Westmore, they have not been committed to ending the private school voucher programs. They're taking money from our public schools and putting them into private schools.
You've managed to give Kelly time to rebut again.
I know. Thanks for mentioning my name. Hey, listen, I just want to say, you know, the Boost program that's in effect right now, this is something that we have been working on, and some of us that have been around Annapolis for a very long time talking about the importance of these programs, getting people into their faith-based education. These are the people that are in Jewish Orthodox communities and within the Catholic communities that cannot afford the type of religion that their faith-based needs. I am about supporting Boost, and I will continue to support Boost when I'm governor of this state.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. You can talk afterwards, happily. John Barrett.
Yes, or applaud for me. I support public school choice, but not a willy-nilly expansion of charter schools and magnets and others. There was a large federal study that came out a few years ago, that showed that on average, students in charter schools do no better and no worse than students in regular public schools. However, certain types of public charter schools have been found very effective. I mentioned KIPP public charter schools. Those are no excuses charter schools. Promise Academy charter schools and Harlem Children's Zone have been found very effective. There's a certain charter school model called Core Knowledge in Colorado and other parts of the country that are effective. Here's a crazy concept. Let's expand charter school models that have been tested and shown to make a big difference in student achievement.
David Lasher.
Yeah, faith and choice. So a word on faith. I think we need more faith in society, not politics, but as part of the fabric of society. And when it comes to choice, I think I've made clear that choice is the tactic, the model that we need to bring about better educational results for not just the students in Maryland, but also teachers in Maryland. So I agree with all the tactics that you mentioned, all of the above. I'm for the Boost Awards. I think the Boost is maybe $2 million a year. We're talking about $4 billion new per year under Kerwin. We can expand Boost. Not mentioned so far, choice is meaningless if students can't get to the schools they want to go to. So transportation vouchers have to be part of the solution. And the funding formulae are going to have to be revisited.
Thank you. Jerome Siegel.
Yeah, so I try to look at it a little bit historically. We didn't have public schools in this country 200 years ago, right? It came in really after the Civil War. And they started really, it was boys' education, and it was like 4 years, and it built up very slowly. But where we are today is really quite astonishing. Now people are not just pre-K, people are talking about public daycare and so on. And then we have in the household, we have the enormous revolution that all four of enormous implications for children of mothers joining the formal workforce. So what's happened is that actually children end up spending more time with their teachers and in school than they do in their families. Well, this is a complete reversal of what being human was about of all of human history until maybe the last 50 years, and it's getting more extensive. The implication of that is that the state, the government, has become a real partner in raising children, almost like one of these platonic experiments where children would be taken away from their parents at birth and raised by the state that the Greeks explored. So in a pluralistic society, you don't want to just give all that over to one rubber stamp model.
Thank you.
You want to
Time,
have
sir.
pluralism,
Time.
which is a range of different public options.
Doug Gansler.
I have no problem with the concept of public charter schools. They're successful in most places and they work in Maryland. I just don't want to give up on public schools. And I'm the only Democrat up here that's been elected to office and served for 16 years. And when I was Attorney General, I led during times of crisis. When gay people were not allowed to marry those who they loved, I literally got impeached for leading the statewide marriage equality movement by the Republicans in Annapolis. When the big banks were throwing people out of their homes, I was president of all the attorneys general in the country and fought the big banks and got $2 billion here in Maryland to keep people in their homes. I'm not going to give up on the public school system. We can put vocational training in the schools, we can put literacy trainings in the schools, but we need leadership. That's what this requires. There's no reason why Montgomery County schools and Howard County schools prosper, but Baltimore City schools don't. It's just been a lack of leadership and concern and care and getting the stakeholders in the room and make it work. And the only answer that's no good is that's how we've always done it before. Any other idea is worthy of consideration.
Thank you. Mr. Jaffe.
Many years ago, when I first started teaching, a parent comes to me and says, Mr. Jaffe, I don't understand. My oldest son is doing very well. My youngest son is not doing well at all. I remember I said words like this: it's very easy to be a producer, but very difficult to be a parent. So what we really need are good parents, good mother, good father. And if you come from a broken home, then that's where the surrogates have to come in. And that's also the benefit of the Tutor Mentor Team program. They will help parents who are having problems. They will help teachers that are having problems. So I think that's what I'd like to do. We have to bring back the family as an institution. It needs to be resurrected.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jaffe. All right, our final question will come from Bill Dudney.
So speaking at the school level, specific level, programmatic level, that's going to impact kids on the ground. It's going to impact people like me. That's going to impact people who are sitting in your audience. This could be a softball question, and your job is to not answer as such. Capiche?
No.
So I'm going to ask you a question that's a softball question in some ways, but it's your job to not make it that. And that I'm asking for very specific programmatic answers of how this impacts teachers and students on the ground. And my question is, what excites you most about Kerwin funding and how it can improve schools?
We'll start with you, Mr. Jaffe.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yep, so the question is simply, with the Kerwin initiative, what excites you most about it, programmatically,
Okay,
and
thank
specifically
you.
on the ground?
Nothing excites me about the Kerwin report. It's a waste of taxpayers' money. That's my answer. What we really need are good teachers, good parents, and using our resources more effectively.
Okay, Doug Gansler.
I would say universal, of all the great components of it, I would say the universal pre-K component, because when I started Charm City Lacrosse here in Baltimore about 12 years ago, we were in Carroll Park every Saturday morning, and I actually go every Saturday morning. We moved into Patterson Park as well. I had these children, they're bright, beautiful, wonderful, inner city kids, 4, 5, 6 years old. They show up, they're smiling, they're bright, they look in the eye, they shake your hand, and then they're great lacrosse players. And that's this is the epicenter of lacrosse. And if you watch a Gilman versus St. Paul's game, 40 of those kids are going to college because of lacrosse. And I wanted to provide that same opportunity to Baltimore City kids. But then you get them tested. And you get the coach from Gilman, the coach from McDonough says, I want that young boy to come to my school, a young girl. They get tested and they can't read. And that's because they got behind from the beginning. So I would say the universal pre-K would be the biggest thing and the most important component. And we have the money to do it, so let's get it done.
Mr. Siegel.
Yeah, so as I've been saying before, so Kerwin is really two completely different reports. One of these reports is about what should be the mission of the public schools in Maryland, how are we doing, and how do we improve on that mission? That's the educational question. The other has to do with justice and equity and the flow of resources, human resources, physical resources, financial resources to different groups in the society. And you can answer the mission question in a whole variety of ways and still deal with the equity question as a different one. Now, where the Kerwin Commission is good, it's more than good, it's excellent. I think it's gold standard is in wrestling with the equity issues. Tremendous inequity in America, and Kerwin was a major step in doing that. And you're talking about free pre-K, I think that's a good target. It really is very, very important in terms of the equity issues. When you get to the mission, however, it's dreadful. It's dreadful. Their starting point is we don't have a world-class thing. When you start talking world-class and start comparing, what's the metric?
Thank you.
What are you going to compare Shanghai with?
Thank you,
that drives you down the rabbit hole. They went down the rabbit hole and don't know it.
So there is so much money coming, too much money coming in my expectation to be spent effectively, that I worry about how it's going to be used. But what does excite me about the money coming, even if I think it is excessive, is that it does give us opportunity to repair the key defect of Kerwin, which was the absence of any innovation in the education portfolio, the way we deliver education. So the ability to fund innovative programs is what would excite me.
Thank you. John Bear.
Thank you. So I support Kerwin and the additional funding. It is important to recognize that we've been down this path before. 20 years ago, there was something called the Thornton Commission. And a lot of excitement about it. It produced a big increase in spending, as I mentioned, during the 2000s in education. It did not produce improved student outcomes. This time, we need to spend that money on programs, the new money on programs that will actually work. The part that I'm most excited about is career and technical education. But again, a lot of vocational education programs don't work. If I'm governor, we will expand the ones that do, like career academies. My philanthropic team funded their expansion in California. These are small learning communities within a high school that have a career theme like engineering or law or healthcare, links with local employers who provide summer jobs. We need a path like career academies for students who go on to college and those who don't. It's been shown to increase long-term earnings. That kind of funding could make a major difference for thousands of kids across the state.
John King.
I'm excited about many elements of the blueprint, the investment in funding equity, the expansion of pre-K, the investment in raising teacher pay, making all of our high poverty schools, community schools with wraparound services. But having been a high school teacher, one of the things I'm most excited about is the opportunity to invest in college and career programs in high school so that every high school student finds their passion, the thing that they connect with, that they want to do after high school. There's opportunity for more early college programs where students start taking college courses while in high school, the opportunity for career and technical education programs that prepare students for jobs, from health services to jobs at the port to cybersecurity to early engineering. There's the opportunity for more advanced placement courses, opportunities for kids to take an advanced placement biology or chemistry class or physics class that might get them excited about the sciences. If we can find for every high school student that thing that they're passionate about, we can make sure that students graduate ready for what's next.
Thank you. Kelly Schultz.
Well, there's something we can agree on. Listen, I was at the Secretary of the Department of Labor for 4 years. I was the Secretary of Department of Commerce for 3 years. And one really important connection with that is our workforce and our businesses and how do we connect them together. And one thing that we have been able to be successful with, where I can say the Kerwin obviously did not spend enough time on because they had me in their meetings for all of 1 hour as the Secretary of Labor to talk about workforce development. But what we have to do is we have to look at those programs that are working. The youth apprenticeship programs that started out as a pilot program in 2 school districts, and now every single school district has a connection to businesses and industries that are bringing the kids in to earn and learn at the same time. By the time I left the Department of Labor, there were more apprenticeship programs in this state than had ever happened before in non-traditional programs. Not just the traditional apprenticeship programs, not just plumbing and heating and air conditioning and electricity, but with cybersecurity and teaching and finance and being able to make sure that we put people into these wonderful professions. That can happen in our public schools.
Thank you. Kyle Selchuk.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with a couple of, what the candidates said, especially when it comes to funding, innovative programs. I'm part of a program advisory committee for Montgomery County Public Schools. And what I led the last 2 years is something called the Business Pitch Challenge. It's just one of many creative ideas that I bring to the table. And what we did is, especially during the COVID season, because people couldn't be in person, we did an online Shark Tank called the Business Pitch Challenge. I even got Mark Cuban to send a message to these kids. So things like that, funding more things that get these kids active. These kids truly wanted to do something because we had incentives for them. They could win stuff. We partnered with like Chick-fil-A and these other awesome partners. These kids were excited about the program that we made for them. So if you look up the Business Pitch Challenge, that's something that's just working in Montgomery County, Maryland. And what's really cool about that is I don't even agree with a lot of people, on this program advisory committee in Montgomery County, but we were still able to come together for that. And that's something that's huge and something that I definitely bring to the table is as an affiliate, I can work with both people, both sides. You know what I'm saying? And that's what we're going to bring. Thanks.
Thank you. Robin Ficker.
Well, I appreciate the goals of Kerwin, but we have not been increasing our tax base in order to pay for Kerwin. Amazon, 25,000 jobs earning $155,000 each went to Northern Virginia, not Maryland. Apple, their new campus, $1 billion campus, 3,000 jobs earning $188,000 each. Didn't come to Maryland, it went to North Carolina. Google is spending $9.5 billion in new construction projects this year, not $1 in Maryland. Boeing, the world's largest airplane construction company, isn't locating at BWI or in Maryland, it's going to Northern Virginia. Raytheon, the world's largest builder of airplane engine parts, is not coming to Maryland from Massachusetts, it's going to Northern Virginia. The Maryland Department of Commerce has not done its job.
Thank you. Nancy Wallace.
Well, this was the last question, and then therefore the last comment.
This is the last question on the Kerwin Commission, and then you each get to make a final statement.
The thing that excites me most about the Kerwin Commission is the 3-year-old specific portion of the pre-K. I think that stimulating the love of learning and preparing the students, we have a lot of pre-K for 4-year-olds, but that extension I think is helpful. And I will touch on this perhaps volcanic topic, but I think getting the kids away from the electronic media and more into the school system in terms of interactions on a better education, away from the screens, the cell phones, et cetera, I think would be a better foundation for their learning. None of the candidates up here tonight have said the one huge gap in this, which is completing the whole education process, which is free college for all students. And I strongly support that, and we will make it work. If the rest of the advanced, developed countries in the world can do it, so can we. Thank you.
Okay. You may have just done it, but you get to do it again anyway. Now, each candidate will get 1 minute to make their final closing statements. And we will begin with you, Nancy.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to come tonight and explore these critical topics. One thing I have that hasn't come up yet is I have been a tutor and a mentor for a disadvantaged family for 25 years now, and have learned how ridiculously privileged my own background is and what America really is like. I've been going to the courts, the jails, been picked up by the police and said, what are you doing here? And all the rest of it. So I've been there and I've helped my kids go through, and I am just sick at heart of how difficult the world is for so many, half the kids or more of this state and this country. I agree with many of the points that others have raised here in terms of pre-K, in terms of the academies, not just for jobs, but for service and community service. We should have an academy for political leadership, and we need to deal with the climate issue. I think the students should be involved, and the teachers and students should be working together in a community for each school to change it to a carbon neutral school. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin?
Let's talk numbers. I'm the only one up here who's going to give you a tax cut. 2 cents in the state sales tax. That's $780 a year tax cut for each household. No other candidate up here is giving you a tax cut anywhere like that. Let's talk law cases. I'm not practicing law now, but I've completed 40,000 cases in all Maryland courts and overturned 4 state laws, including 2 that were certified as constitutional by the father of Catherine O'Malley in federal court, overturned those state laws. Let's talk about ballot questions. I've placed 25 questions on the ballot by collecting 18,000 signatures for each that have received 2,537,403 votes for those ballot questions. More votes than Larry Hogan and Ben Jealous got put together. We pushed through term limits, a limit on property taxes, and sewage sludge trenching, garbage dumps out of a residential.
Moving on now, sir. Thank you to Kyle Selchik.
My name is Kyle Sepchik, K-Y-L-E-S-E-F-C-I-K. I've been serving the community my whole entire life, through my nonprofit, through my gyms. I'm not made of money. I live in an apartment taking care of my 2 boys. I'm hustling, I'm grinding. There's a reason I'm running as unaffiliated, and there's a reason I have no political experience. Just a small business that are trying to grind for my kids, and if you look me up and look who I've been, not who I'm saying I am now, that the lights are on, please look into who I am. You want somebody, people keep saying they want their schools safer. So do I, and I'll do something about it. I'm 34 years old. I have a lot of energy. I'm healthy. I'm humble. I have no ego. I want to learn. I'm learning from these people here today. That's one of the main reasons I love about these things is I'm listening. I'm taking notes. I want to go back and see how we're really going to fix things. My word is my word, and you're going to see that. Thank you.
Kelly Schultz.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for coming out here tonight. My name is Kelly Schultz. I'm running for governor, and I would like to ask each and every one of you for your vote. Don't forget, July 14th is the last day to vote early, and you can vote on July 19th in your primary for your party. Listen, I was a young mom. I was waiting tables, tending bar, doing everything I could to keep my family together back in the day. Right? I never thought in a million years I'd be here asking each and every one of you for your support for me to run for governor. But I would say because I was that young mom, and now I'm that grandmom, and because I started my own business, and because I worked in this administration, we made great things happen for the citizens here in Maryland. And even because I was that waitress that worked so hard, I would say that I am uniquely qualified to be your next governor. And I promise you this, I am not going to let you down, because I'm doing this because it is about our next generation. It's about the kids. That's who we're fighting for. That's how we're going to make a difference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John King.
Thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to be a part of this discussion. You know, it took my family 3 generations to travel 25 miles from enslaved in a cabin in Gaithersburg to serving in the cabinet of our first Black president. The reality is I'm here today because my ancestors lived with a faith in a future they could not see. And I have faith that our state, the wealthiest state and the wealthiest country that's ever existed, can make this a New Deal moment where we deliver more for our people. I've spent time as a teacher, as a principal, as Secretary of Education for President Obama, my entire career in public service, trying to make sure that government is a force for good in people's lives. In this moment, that means world-class schools for all our kids. That means universal affordable child care. That means treating healthcare as a human right. That means a supply of housing that folks can afford. It means a Green New Deal for Maryland where we take on climate action. It means investing in public transportation. It means seeing the opportunity to build shared prosperity. I hope folks will visit our website, johnkingforgovernor.com, and join our movement and give us your vote.
Thank you, sir. John Barron.
So all of the candidates share similar goals. These are all good people. We all want world-class schools. We all want to improve wages, break the cycle of poverty, but the other candidate's approach to achieving these goals misses a fundamental point, which is that many government programs, no matter how well-intentioned they are, just don't work, as we've seen too often when the results are actually measured. So when they propose over the course of this forum and others to roll out one unproven plan after the next, we've done that. That's what we've been doing for decades. I mean, 20 years from now, will our children look back at this time and say, we faced all of these persistent problems: low student achievement, stagnant wages, stagnant poverty rates, and we just kept doing the same thing again and again? Or will they look back at this moment and say that we did something extraordinary? We led the nation pioneering a new governing approach based on solutions that aren't just spending money, don't just sound good, but have been tested in the real world and shown to make a big difference in people's lives. I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you. David Lasher?
If you're happy with what you've been seeing and getting from the Republicans and the Democrats for these last 10 or 20 years, then you've got options to pick from here on the stage. And I want to be emphatic about here on the stage, because those who are here on the stage are showing something about their priorities this evening. But for those of you who are maybe ready for something different than the Republicans and the Democrats, are looking for a capable, principled, civil alternative, well, that's why Christiana and I stepped forward to be an option for you on November 8th. I would invite you to learn more about us, invite us to your forums, and we'd be delighted to carry the conversation on this topic and others. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerome Siegel?
Yeah. So as I was saying before, like being governor, really there are two basic kind of roles. One of them is this managerial role, and one of them I call the leadership role, which really involves value questions. And in real time here, just in the last few hours, this thing of Bruce Schuren agreeing to take on this new role of the state manager has changed my concept, and it's changing it just as I sit here as to what it would be to be governor. And one of the kind of things I think that I would get more deeply into hasn't really come up in this discussion, which is the whole relationship between our school system and our job system. And I think in America, it's one of the deepest things that's screwed up. There's a fallacy of composition that just because individuals can improve their chances in the job system, that somehow by improving our schools, everyone can. But actually in America, we're playing musical chairs in the job system. And while one person, by getting into a better school and doing better, can get the better chair, not everyone can do that. It's not Lake Wobegon. So most of the time what we're doing is we're spinning our wheels and just taking on staggering debt.
Thank you.
That doesn't work.
Doug Gansler.
If you truly care about education in Baltimore City, I ask for you to vote for me and for my Lieutenant Governor, Candace Hollingsworth. Not only because she'll be the first Black woman Lieutenant Governor in Maryland's history, but because she was mayor of Hyattsville for 6 years and started our Black Party, which is an organization nationally that works on issues for Black Americans. We're most experienced, yes, clearly, in running for it, but we're also the only people that can win the Democratic and the general election this fall. Kelly Schultz is going to be a ridiculously difficult candidate for us to run against. And all the polls show that I'm the only Democrat that can win. The Republican Governor Association, the Goucher poll, which said that she would win, a moderate Republican like her, would win 55% to 38% in this state this year against a progressive Democrat. Our own poll came back today, which says that I get 22.5%, and the next closest will be Tom President, 15% running against her. So we need to win to help Baltimore City and its education system.
Thank you. Ralph Jaffe.
The polls are flawed. First, I want to say that please check my website, fedupwithcrookedpolitics.com. If you want to get a new reform system, I hope you will vote for me. Part of the problem is the media itself. They've become morally bankrupt, but I will say this, I think our moderator, Denise Koch, has done a very good job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. The conversation, which has been very interesting, can continue. There is a meet and greet right outside as soon as we conclude, which we are doing now. I want to take this moment. Thank you so much, BCCC, for allowing us to have this debate here. Thank you to the candidates for taking time out of your very busy schedules for joining us. It has been a lively debate. Thank you, the Baltimore Teacher Network. And thank you, the Maryland Alliance of Public Charter Schools. For those of you who've been watching us on WJZ.com or streaming on CBS News Baltimore, thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful night, and don't forget to vote. Thank you.
Well, images take some vision and some thought to put together, and that was done by a longtime friend of mine, Calvin Watkins. Calvin's up there. He's humble. Calvin, please give him a hand. He did a phenomenal job. He's a filmmaker, something I do as well outside of my role with Fox 45.